Hello, everyone. This is Tom Fox back for another episode, and I'm absolutely thrilled today to have Clint Morse with me. Clint, first of all, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, and I appreciate your inviting me.
Clint, could you tell us a little bit about your professional background?
After college, I went to the University of Texas Law School. And after I graduated, that was during the Vietnam War, and Uncle Sam had a claim on me. And the way I was able to finish law school was that I joined the United States Navy while I was in law school and got into their JAG program, which is their law area. And so after I graduated, I had a 4-year commitment to the United States Navy. And I was assigned to a very hazardous duty station, Naval Air Station, Memphis, Tennessee. And so I was there for almost 4 years. And then I got out a little bit early because the war was winding down, and I already had a job with a firm in Houston called Andrews Kurth, Campbell and Jones, now known as Hutton Andrews Kurth. And so I was an associate there and made partner and was a partner there for a number of years. And then some friends of mine who I'd gone to law school and the Navy with, who lived in Roanoke, Virginia, called me one day and said, "We really do need a lawyer in your classification, which is labor and employment law. And would you be interested in moving your family to Roanoke, Virginia?" And that's very close to Washington and Lee, where I had gone to undergraduate school. And to make a long story short, I said, fine. And I practiced there for a while. And then, another long story short, I ultimately wound up practicing labor law with a international law firm, Ogletree Deakins. And that's where I practiced until I retired.
When did you move to the Hill Country or Kerrville?
In 2013, we finished our home. We still lived in Roanoke, but we finished our home here. And we used it as a vacation house for a couple of years. And then we finally moved full time to the Kerrville area. We live outside of Hunt, Texas, and we moved there in 2015.
And when did you first become involved with Rotary?
That's a bit of a longer story. When I was in Roanoke, there were 3 labor and employment lawyers in the area. And that was back in the day when Rotary was very strict on classifications. And if a person was already a member in the club, that classification was his or hers, and no one else could be in the club in the same classification without the permission of the member. When I tried to join the Rotary Club of Roanoke, there was a labor lawyer already there. And he refused to accept my application. He said, "I'm already here," and I blocked that application. And they tried to come up with a different classification, but he wouldn't budge. And so they couldn't admit me. So I said, "That's okay. I'll go out and join the Rotary Club of Salem, Virginia." And I got invited out there. And the first person I met when I walked in the door was the third labor lawyer that was practicing in the area. And he was already a member there. So this was before email and cell phone. So I wrote him a letter. And I said, "Look, if you don't want me to come out there anymore, I won't visit anymore because I know you're already a member." And he wrote me a very nice letter back, and he said, "Not only not object, I will nominate you to join our club." That fellow's name was Ray Robrick. And that is the example of a real Rotarian. And that's how I got in.
What were some of the differences of the Rotary Club in Salem and the Rotary Club in Kerrville?
Alike in one respect that was very important to me when we were trying to find a place to retire. The Rotary Club of Salem had about 140 members and was a huge club, very active, wonderful club to be a member of. And I had no idea what the Rotary Club here would be like. And so I got online and found out they were just as big. And I said, well, that sounds great. That's how I sort of steered myself to the Kerrville Rotary Club.
What has being a member of Rotary meant to you both professionally and personally?
I have a strong bias that if you join a Rotary Club to get business, you will not stay because that's not the reason that you should join. And people who think they're going to attract business and that's the only reason they join, they don't stay. The real reason you join is to get involved in community service. And that's what has been the most rewarding part of being a Rotarian to me. That's not to say that I didn't get a bunch of business, but that's not why you should join.
What are some of the projects that you have worked on that have really meant kind of the most to you?
It depends on which club you're talking about.
Let's start with Salem.
They were one of the most creative, innovative clubs that I have ever seen. They were very sports oriented. One of their members came up with the idea, this was years and years ago, that the ODAC, which was ODAC, which was the conference that all the Division III schools were in around Virginia, needed a postseason basketball tournament. Didn't have one. And he came up with the idea that the Rotary Club of Salem should sponsor it and split the money with the conference. And that was one of the most fun things. And we made a ton of money and it was fun. You didn't have to go sell brooms or things like that. It was just a whole lot of fun. Then somebody else came up with the idea that the club should sponsor an award given to the outstanding male and female Division III basketball players in the United States. And so I wound up, when we started it, being the chair of the whole thing. And we accepted applications from the colleges all over the United States. And the criteria were obviously, are you a good basketball player? What are your grades? And what are your community service? And so I chaired that committee for years as we selected the winners of the what we called it the Johnston's Trophy because Johnston's is a big provider of college jewelry. And that's what I did for years. And it was the most uplifting thing to read the applications of these young men and women who were nominated by their schools to be the Johnston's recipient. And that was a tremendous amount of fun. Now, here, the program that I enjoy the most is ringing the bell at Gibson's for the Salvation Army. It is one of the most fun things. It's a people watching exercise. You look at people who don't look like they've got a cent to their name, and they will come up and put $5 in the kettle and tell you about how the Salvation Army helped their family when they were young. And then you'll see people roll a big Suburban in their nice clothes, and they'll walk right past you. But it is a very uplifting thing to do in the Christmas time.
You are also our speaker chairman. And I was wondering if you could say a few words about that. And what intrigues me is the types of speakers you look for or try to cultivate, how you keep all this in your head about who's spoken and who hasn't, and really how do you think through what does our membership want to hear about?
If you're going to be in a club, then you need to pick a way for you to volunteer that you enjoy. And I can't tell you how much I enjoy being the program chair and how flattered I am that the club wants me to keep doing it. What I've tried to do, which has made it a lot more fun, I think, because we have better speakers. We used to have the speakers committee, and that was a half dozen people that wanted to be involved. I found out that really the only person that was really contributing anything was the chairman. And so we just gave up on the committee. And what I have repeatedly urged that we have a committee of the whole now. And I encourage everybody in the club to come up with suggestions, people they think would be good speakers. And that's basically what drives it. And it ensures that we have speakers from just virtually every aspect of community life here in the Kerrville area. And there's not much more scientific to it than that. You, by the way, have been very helpful in suggesting some very good speakers.
I will share with you perhaps the talk I enjoyed the most sort of evolved into mountain lions in this part of the state, but it started with you seeing a picture in a restaurant, I think in Llano, but it may have been a different town, about a dead panther.
Well, that's not quite right.
All right, well,
The
let's
the
get it
the
right then.
the town in Texas is called Goathwaite,
Oh,
and it's a pretty nice little town. And we stopped there at a gas station restaurant that has delicious coffee and good restrooms. And they have a bunch of historic pictures all up and down the walkway that goes from the restaurant to the restrooms. And one of them was a picture that struck my wife and I very, made a great impression. It was the picture of the last
jaguar.
that was shot in Mills County in, I believe, 2021. And went online and I researched, and to my complete amazement, the jaguars used to be all over Texas. I had no idea. But because obviously they're prey on cattle and things, they were gradually all shot out. And that was the last one shot in Mills County. I think the last jaguar was shot in Texas in 1946. That got me interested about what's happening to the mountain lions. And that's why I scheduled a speaker from Parks and Wildlife to come tell us about what's happening to the mountain lions in Texas today.
How do you balance the different elected officials and those who may want to run, i.e., candidates? Because for me, as a audience member or club member or listener, I enjoy hearing from our elected officials. I enjoy hearing from those who run, but you've got to balance that in some way to either give everyone equal time or really toe the line somewhere. How do you keep that balance?
The rule in Rotary is we are not an organization that promotes any candidates. We're not a political organization. And but we encourage our members to be involved in the political process. So that means that, in my estimate, we can have speakers who are running for an office as long as we schedule both all the candidates. And so that's what we do. Now, we have to be very careful because while I think most of our members want to hear from the candidates, there are those that feel like maybe we shouldn't be involved at all. But so far, we've managed to work it out and make sure that we invite both candidates, or maybe three if there's that. And I think that's fair. And I want to hear from the candidates about where they stand and what they propose to do.
You recently had, I'm going to call it a series, and I don't know if you had this in mind, when you scheduled it, but we had 3 owners or operators of local press organizations in Kerrville and Kerr County. We had the editor of the Kerrville Daily Times. We had the founder and editor of the Lead, and then we had West Kerrville or Current, I think,
No, we didn't have the West Kerr Current. We had the Community Journal.
the Community Journal. And I thoroughly enjoyed that series. And like I said, I don't know if you intended to showcase our local press or not, but how did that evolve? Just sort of came up, or did you think through this whole
Well,
presentation?
got the idea. It occurred to me that we had 3 different types of newspapers in the area. The old time Kerrville Daily Times, which has been here for years and years and has a member who's in the club. And then we had the Hill Country Community Journal, which one of our other members started from scratch. And then we had the brand new Lead, which is there's no printed part of it. It is all online. So I thought it would be interesting to hear from the 3 different perspectives of the founders of those 3 news organizations, and that's how it turned out.
I thought it was a delightful series. I learned a lot, and I just love that we as a club are actually supporting local journalism, even if that wasn't the stated intent. Maybe let me end this segment by asking what are 1 or 2 of the speakers that for you really stand out? I mentioned the one about the mountain lions. That was the one that struck me probably because the speaker was so great, but also I knew nothing about the topic until you told your story about how the talk came to pass for our club. But what are maybe 1 or 2 of the ones that really you enjoyed the most?
We've had so many good ones. And let me just say, sort of a funny answer to your question. Sometimes I schedule speakers that I have some doubts about. And it is incredible to me how often these speakers that I have some doubts about turn out to be the best programs that we have. So it really is hard for me to pick out 1 or 2 that I think were really outstanding. They all sort of blur together with me. And the program we had today from OLH, when I first got that email, my initial reaction was, what's OLH? And then I realized when I thought thinking about it, that we've had kids, students from all the high schools come talk to us, and we've never had anybody from OLH. Those young students today were fabulous. Some of the best public speakers we've ever had. And that really reflects a lot on the kind of young people that OLH is turning out for us.
Clint, I'd like to end by asking you, what has Rotary meant to you?
I guess there are several things. As I said earlier, it has given me a chance to really perform some valuable community service that I'm proud of. And I'm involved in a number of other things for our club, just like everybody else. And it has given me a chance to make good friends with lots of the members of the clubs. I can't tell you how proud I was when I came back to visit in Virginia, and I made the weekly meeting of the Rotary Club of Salem. And when they introduced the guests, there was a huge roar and clap when I was introduced. And I had lots of good friends there. And the same thing has happened here. So I guess it's a combination of enjoying really making a difference in the community to make it better and the friendships that you develop.
Clint, unfortunately, we are near the end of our time or at the end of our time for this episode, but I wanted to thank you for taking the time to visit with me. And I wanted to thank you for your service to Rotary.
Thank you. And thank you for your service to Rotary.